You're in tune to NBC broadcasting from studios located at Richmond Hill in Kingstown. And as promised earlier this morning, we would have with us in studio Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralph E. Gonsalves and Professor Richard Robertson as we continue to provide you with ongoing updates as to what is happening at the La Soufrière volcano. And of course, this morning we will check in with Professor Robertson first of all to get an idea as to what is the latest. We do realize that there was another explosive session within the last 2 hours or so, and we'll get an update on that as well. First of all, we'll join Professor Robertson, and we say good morning. Good morning, Professor. Good morning, Professor.
Hi, good morning.
Yes,
good morning. Hi,
good to hear you this morning.
Good morning, Richie.
The Prime Minister is also in studio as well with us.
Good morning.
Yeah?
Yes, Professor, can you
good morning,
provide
Prime
us
Minister.
with an update as to, since our last conversation yesterday?
Yes, well, lots of happened as people would have realized this morning. I probably started since yesterday at 6 o'clock. We well, we did that reconnaissance of the areas that had been affected by activity, and noted that quite a lot of the damage effects was limited largely to the western, which is the areas going from Fancy all the way to Robertson, that had not been affected by the pyroclastic flows that went down the valley. They have been affected by ashfall, and therefore, when the ash gets remobilized, the most damaging thing that people know is the pyroclastic flows. Most of that activity was on the western side of the volcano. Flows went down Larakai, between Larakai and sort of the Duvalle Point, if anybody know that side. They had some destruction, and then just before Larakai, Monron area. So that's what happened. And then from then, the volcano kind of has a pattern of activity where it's now having these periods of tremor, what we call tremor, interspersed by quieter sort of period when it's when there's no tremor. And that continued, short bands of continuous seismic tremor interspersed by other kinds of activity. Later on in the afternoon, as we would have said, it started to have these events that we call long period earthquakes. So you had tremor, you had long period earthquakes. And about the night, the long period earthquakes got more regular and got bigger in size, larger in magnitude. I showed event later on is that when we had a briefing with him this morning, we were saying that our interpretation of the activity, certainly the hybrids, was that it was suggesting that there was some sort of dome growth happening. And if we go back to the sort of model that we were explaining, I was trying to explain last time in terms of what we think is happening, sort of the milk boiling over kind of model. What you could think of happening is that this volcano got wind, if there's, you're boiling the milk, and then the froth is the gas-rich part that eventually pushed out what was capping it, which was the some material that was there, and it comes through and it pushed that out. And the effusive part of the eruption was it getting 9 days, and it got it out of the way, and it slowly oozed out. But once it got it out of the way, the weight of that magma then sort of capped the froth. So it's like the froth tried to come out, and the pot raised up a little bit, and then it got stopped by the weight of the dome that was growing there. And eventually pressure built up that it pushed through this very vigorous stage of activity, which is the froth, if you think of the frothy part of the milk sort of just bubbling and going up in the air. And you have all these, you had a very intense period initially, fine ash that was created. You had these huge plumes that went up in the air and sent. After that, we then saw it getting into a pattern where you started, it suggested that the energy that it had in it was being used up. All that gas is being used up, and that it was beginning to slow down slightly. And once it starts sort of losing a little bit of energy and slowing down slightly, what then tends to happen is that the froth that was used up starts becoming more solid and more difficult to move. So therefore, when yesterday morning we started to have pyroclastic density current, that then reinforced what we thought, that once it starts going slow, it means that bigger blocks are going to form. And when it explodes now, because it has these bigger blocks in them, and therefore, it also doesn't have so much energy, instead of the blocks all going up in the air, some of them fall back on themselves and they produce these pyroclastic flow. Therefore, it suggested us that it was sort of losing some energy. So that it wasn't surprising that after yesterday morning, you didn't really have very much big explosions. You started to have sort of steam venting. And then later on yesterday evening, we started to have these things we call hybrids. You still had the tremor episodes. And when you had the tremor, it went into a little bit of gas. You could hear the sound, the audible sound at the observatory. So that this morning, it suggested to us that definitely was having a hard time getting out, and it was probably building something like a dome or cap, another cap. In other words, that this magma has enough gas in it, we think, enough energy in it, that what we thought once it created that cap again, it will try to move it, it will try to remove it. Pressure will build up and it will try to remove it. We didn't, of course, know that it would do it at I think it's around 6 this morning, 6:30 this morning. It actually then had an explosion. But the way in which it exploded, again, though, gave us some confidence that the model that we have is still correct, because the explosion that we had this morning wasn't as energetic as the one that we had at the beginning, telling us again that it didn't have, even though it broke the cap, it didn't have as much energy as when it started out. So the amount of gas-rich magma that you have there, or that you have there that is at the surface, the amount of milk that you have to boil is probably being used up. So the amount of boiling, a big explosion, say. So what we would expect, if it goes along the same pattern, is that again we would probably start to see an indication that it's trying to grow a dome. In other words, once it slows down, essentially, once it starts moving less fast, what we expect is that the magma to solidify, the top part of it that's close to the vent, to become more solid, and then begins to dry. And therefore, gas-rich material has to build up enough pressure to be able to move it. Now, whether or not it builds up enough pressure and does what it did this morning, which is remove it and have an explosion, that's possible, as well as it's possible that if the cap becomes thick enough and actually just keep it there and it can't come out, and it doesn't have enough energy, in which case it's just off and it's stopped. It's not clear. We'll have to see what happens, but it's into us that we wouldn't be surprised in the coming days that instead of having these very vigorous, really high plumes with fine ash being produced, what we will tend to have more are these discrete explosions like we had this morning, which in volcanologists we will call it a classic volcanian explosion, where you have a punching of material up into the air. Look, there might be one that would have gone in the upper parts of the Robertson on the eastern side. We did see some coming towards Wallabu. We couldn't see very far on the western side, further than sort of Wallabu area. But again, a volcanic explosion involved a forceful ejection of material up into the air, and that's is probably. We won't be surprised if we have either it's stopping because the cap has stopped, and when I say stopping, at least stopping for a certain time before it pressurizes and you have another bang and another discrete explosion into the activity that you had at the beginning. It doesn't look like it's like that at present, but the way in which the gas pockets move is not. The milk analogy is one thing because it tells you how to create the foam, but it's not so good because in the milk analogy, you have to have the gas coming through all the time. So you can think of it like you have pockets of gas-rich magma that's beneath the surface that comes up, tries to come up, and a batch gets enough pressure to either break the cap or go into a vigorous explosion, and then it caps itself, and then another set have to come through for it to keep going again. Now, we don't know how much you have that is there to come through, so therefore we don't know how long it will go on. As I said before, it could either go on for a few weeks or months, and therefore that will tell you whether or not you could have more of the same. But certainly it's suggesting to us what we see now, that you're probably into a quote-unquote more quieter period than the vigor that we had at the beginning, which I guess is a good thing. So that's in a bit more long-winded way of saying what we've seen so far.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. We have a poor connection, unfortunately. Prime Minister, you wanted to...
Richie, I just want to ask you a couple of things. The connection is not as good as the other days, but that happens sometime. That has nothing, I think, to do with the volcano, but more with telecommunications.
Yeah.
I hear you that you can't say with mathematical certainty or precision what is going to happen. But you have outlined that on the basis of your scientific observation, you see a particular new phase, if I understand you correctly. A phase which is, at least for the time being, despite the explosion this morning, which would suggest, as you use, quieter, not enough energy, more sluggish, and the like.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what happened overnight, before the explosion this morning, and I was wondering that when you talk whether the Lady Lassafre decided that because today is the 41st anniversary of the 1979 uprising. I mean, eruption. 1979 eruption. Well, 42nd really, 42 years.
Yeah.
That Lady Lassafre decided to put on a show for us this morning, but not one which is as dangerous as in the preceding days. But what I want to ask, what was the outpouring yesterday of ash and pyroclastic flows?
Right.
Did the ash outpouring slow down?
Yes, I mean, certainly since yesterday morning, what we have gotten into is more what they call discrete events. So the first couple of days of the eruption, we were into a succession of events that more or less went on continuously. You were either having plumes that went up in the air, or in between you had ash venting. You haven't had that so far in the last 24, 48 hours. What you've had is an event, and yesterday morning you had the explosion, and then you had pyroclastic flows associated. A lot of the ash, certainly yesterday, seemed to have been sort of on the northern part of the island. Some of it did go towards Barbados. It didn't really come very far south. I don't think very much areas in the southern part of St. Vincent got ashed on. And also the one this morning is the same thing. The main activity is really on the volcano itself, just south of that. I think, in fact, the one this morning, you're not going to have very much ash anyway in St. Vincent other than on the volcano itself. And in fact, from the satellite imagery, it looks like it's not even actually going to get to Barbados, because as it's got offshore, the plume sort of wrapped around more towards its southeast. So it's probably going to pass between Barbados and St. Vincent, which is good for Barbados. So they're not going to probably have ash from the events this morning.
What
a
was
lot of the ash didn't go south.
Well, I can see overnight in Kingstown, I didn't see the ash, so that confirms what you're saying. But I don't know what would have happened in the northeast and northwest. No,
I don't think it got. I mean, we didn't get any. I'm at Belmont, which is just above between Rosal and Chumuka.
Yes,
we didn't have any ash from any of the activities, and even the activity on yesterday morning, we didn't have any ash.
Okay. Now, in relation to from 4 o'clock yesterday morning, well, even a little bit earlier, you reported that we had pyroclastic flows coming down mainly on the western side, between Larakai going round to Mon round, Balen du Valais. Now, have we seen over the last, certainly overnight, have we seen any of those flows?
No. I don't think you had any kind of activity overnight that would have generated even proper explosions. What we had during the night, during the trauma episodes, was more venting of, it sounds more like gas and some ash at the volcano. So instead of having explosions, we had gotten into more gas and ash venting when the tremor happened. While before, when your tremor happened, you were having explosions. It changed since the explosion yesterday morning. We haven't really had, I think we had one about 11 o'clock yesterday morning, a little after 11. We had something that produced a lot of ash in Chateaulet. It didn't get as far south as where we are now in Belmont. But then the activity tremor in the afternoon, in the evening, early evening, didn't produce that. And throughout the night, we didn't have any of that. So we've moved from something that's producing the ash during the tremor towards something that might produce an explosion, which is more limited in extent and certainly not producing a lot of ash.
Now, yesterday, I know you did a little excursion on the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
A scientific excursion. Yes. How was the ride? It was cool? It was
unfortunately, the conditions of the volcano was it was kind of overcast, so the visibility wasn't as good as we would have liked, and of course we got a little bit of ash, there's a little bit of rain, but we did see enough to know that the damage that happened. One of the
first of all, before you tell us about more detail about the damage, you left Chateau. Yeah. You left Chateau Belair, and you went north and you came around the top and came around to Oya area.
So, as far as Georgetown.
You wait. Okay. All right. But you want to tell us about the excursion?
Yeah. So we left Chateau Belair, and as we moved along the coast, you moved. We didn't see anything all the way up until we got close to Monrond. And when we got into Monrond, there was evidence in there, and we, as I said, the visibility was bad on the way up, so we couldn't really see very much inland. We were basically seeing along the coastline. But we were looking essentially for these evidence of these deposits. When a pyroclastic flow comes down the valley, what you will tend to find after is, instead of the regular river flow, which you'll see kind of dark gray, black kind of looking, and you could obviously see stream lines, evidence of streams in it, what you'll find is something that looks like a white powder, a grayish powder on the ground. It might be thick, it might be thinner. And that's what we saw just before you get to Monron. We started to see that in some of the rivers. I think the river there is called the Rosa River. There's a river just before Monron. I think there was one in it. And then after you pass Monron, the next one that we saw is the Larakai. We weren't surprised. Larakai is one of the places that pyroclastic flows come down all the time from Soufrière. And then we saw something in Balen, but we couldn't see very much. So we went around, and then when we got to Fancy, we were very surprised to see that Fancy looked really, in fact, it looked green. It looked like Fancy normally looks. It was good. It was good to see that. But then as we moved from Fancy, we went to Oya, Sandy Bay, New Sandy Bay, Old Sandy Bay, and then we got to Orange Hill and Point and past places like that. It became evident that even though there wasn't any pyroclastic flows, there was no evidence of that anywhere along those areas. It was evident that the ash had taken a toll, that there was a lot of ash on the ground. One of the classic things that you tend to find is that the palms, the palm tree, it tends to turn up. When the ash comes, in fact, most of the trees, the leaves kind of droop like that. And you could see that from, even though the visibility wasn't great, you could see that from the boat. And you saw that through. When you got to Rabaka, and in fact, I'll address that now, there was obviously evidence that some flows that had come down, but not pyroclastic flows. The thing that had come down was mud flows, and so that was in the river. When we went back up, though, when we came around, and we came around the top from Belen, visibility was better. You could see easier. And it was clear that the area between sort of just south of Balen, sort of Duvalai Point and all of that, instead of just having a pyroclastic flow in the valley, there was stuff on the headlands itself. It was like if you had draped a white cloth almost that had various patterns on the land, and it had draped and it had more or less killed all the lower level trees, you had some trees poking through it. So you see some stumps of trees poking through it, like the palm trees, you see that. And you had that happening all the way until they got to Larakai. Now, what had happened there is that we think that a surge, which is the pyroclastic flow, is the name we get for the thicker part of the flow. So the thing collapses on itself or it falls over. And the surge is the part that have bigger blocks and boulders, and that tends to stay in the valley. But if it, depending on how it collapses, it basically is a fine cloud of ash mainly that will spill over the mountainside. Now it's hot, and what would have happened is that it came over the gap. Remember, there's a lower lip. The Larakai Valley starts at a low lip in the crater. And we think that the people went up there and then it collapsed on itself and came through that gap. And as it came through the gap, it sort of spread. And when it spread, the spread was from sort of Duvele Point all the way to the south at Larakai. And as it spread over the land, instead of just staying in the valley, it sort of spread over the entire land and just sort of damaged a lot of the vegetation. The tall trees would have been stripped a bit of the vegetation. The trunks would still be there, but a lot of it is where the damage happened. And that happened, and you could see deposits you could see in the valleys that it's a thicker deposit. So that's where most of the damage seemed to have happened from the events that happened early in the morning. And then we saw the others. The other place that it would have happened, we saw, but you couldn't see it properly. As you see up the valley, you could see up into sort of the upper parts of the Wallabu River. There was evidence of steaming. So one of the things people will see, and I'm sure people will think that it's a new vent opening, is that when these flows come down in the valley, if they're very thick and if they're very hot, what tends to happen is that, they come in, especially if they're coming on a valley that has water in it, a regular flowing valley, they cover everything, right? But then when the water continues to fall through, or even if the water is in the ground, what tends to happen, because the material is so hot, it actually has what we call secondary phreatic explosions. So the water boils to steam, and because it's underwater and it's under confined pressure, it actually punches a hole through it, and it actually creates a little vent of steam, which is simply the fact that the material is hot, and it has water, and the water is it becomes a little steam plume, okay? So it was interesting when I was in the boat, the Coast Guard guys were seeing it, and they said, oh, that's a new vent. No, it's not a new vent. It's just the material that came down was hot. It's now in the valley. And when the river come down, it's going to steam. It might steam all over the valley. So you might see like a running white plume down the valleys, or else in some places, it might be a single hole, a space where you'll see steam coming out. That is not a new vent. That's just simply hot material being mobilized. So that's what we saw. When we got back into Chateaubriand, obviously, by then, the event around midday had happened because we got back around 11:30 or so. And there was a lot of ash in Chateaubriand. In fact, the boat had to go around and wait a little bit before we got in. And that ash had to do with the event that happened during the morning. During the morning, you had another one of those small, discrete, explosive events, similar to the one in the morning, early in the morning, the other one about midday. That seemed to have produced a lot of ash in Chateaubriand. And then we dock, and that was the teacher. That's moving from all over. So essentially, the east side was western side was affected, eastern side not so much so.
All right, Professor.
Let me just
Go ahead, Prime Minister.
Let me just ask further, Richie, in the same vein where you're talking about what you saw in the river on the western side. There are reports that in Rabaka itself, that there was some steaming. Is it the same process?
Yes, it is exactly the same process. And don't be surprised. You can have, because you have a lot of, once you start getting pyroclastic density currents or pyroclastic flows, it means that you have a lot of hot deposits up on the mountain. And they're going to remain hot for quite a little while, a few days, it could be actually weeks. In Montserrat, they were weeks after the eruption that you had these things still steaming. That is not surprising. It actually is important that people be careful going if you're thinking of going to see them or going close to them, because the way these things come down, the top of them tend to have a very soft cushion. They feel like powder. And if you go and walk in them, your foot goes through this powder and it gets contact with the hot material below. And at the very least, it could burn you if you go and walk in them. That may be a problem. Okay.
Now, one other question in relation to your scientific excursion. The 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 material that came down, the pyroclastic flows, did it reach into the sea? Any of it?
Yes, at Larakai, that's what when we were along the boat, the only way we could see them because of visibility is when they got to the sea. So the ones I spoke about at Larakai, at Monrond, along the way between north of Larakai, in the valleys you could see these white deposits. They did reach the sea.
Estimated distance into the sea from the shoreline?
I think in most cases there would have been about 2 or 3 miles probably from the from the volcano. It depending on where it is, it could be 2 or 3 miles to get to where the crater was.
So that makes it important that the fishermen and other people stay way outside of those limits.
Yes, I mean, in fact, in terms of the period of activity we're in now, if we're going to have discrete explosions and pyroclastic density currents, we enter a scenario where the ash becomes less of a problem, and the ash will have a problem for people further away. But the things that kill people along the flank of the volcano becomes more of a problem. So the danger to people who are in the zones on the volcano now at red is greater. And also, as you correctly say, the possibility of people who are close to the shoreline becoming affected by pyroclastic flows becomes greater, because the eruptions that we have now, we think, they're more likely to produce pyroclastic flows than the ones we had before.
In accordance with what you're saying, I know yesterday the Maritime Administration our Maritime Administration working in conjunction with the Coast Guard were putting together some possible regulations within the framework of the statute in relation to the law of the land to do some regulation around the coast in the way in which you're talking about, in the same way that you do regulations in the airspace. No?
Yeah.
So that's a very important piece of information arising from what your analysis.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. I think it's needed.
Yes. I did Thornley Myers from Vinlek got in touch with you this morning?
Yes, and we have he's going to assist in terms of getting those stations back up. But I shortly, as you know, when we spoke earlier on, I was saying that we probably into a period of dome building, and it's probably capping itself, and then shortly after it then uncapped itself.
Yes.
So Thornley spoke to me before the uncapping. So we had agreed that he'll do something, but now we hold off until we see what happens in the next 24 hours. And once it looks like it's capping again, it will be a period for them to do what they have to do.
Maybe you can indicate to your listeners here and abroad, why is it you wanted Vinlek to do?
Yeah, well, essentially, we have currently 4 stations that are located on the volcano, stations in Fancy Oya, Bamboo Range, and in Georgetown, which have been out largely because of power problems in those areas. And I believe what happened is that there was a problem, and Vinlek then as a measure of preventative action, when the power was turned off in those areas. So because we went into red and people couldn't go back into those areas because it's been evacuated. So we then lost access to those stations. Now we have been able to continue to monitor because fortunately we still have stations on the mountain to see what's happening, first of all. And secondly, we've been fortunate that we have been able to recognize patterns. And the volcano, although it's dangerous and it does unpredictable things, we've been able to recognize certain patterns and still use the limited stations we have to further sort of tell you what I'm doing now about what we think is happening. But it's been necessary when we have any quiet period to fix the problem so that we get back to full operations, so that we have enough stations that if again a couple of them fail, we still have eyes on the mountain. And that's critical, to be able to see from the records that's happening, the seismic records particularly, what is happening, so that we could gauge what direction this is going in. So hopefully, we're thinking that if it remains unpatterned, what we would expect over the next couple hours is for it to go back into the long period kind of activity, where it's indicating that it's trying to form a dome essentially. And this named long period earthquakes relate to a kind of earthquakes that has to do with, you could think of it like pulsing. Like if you had if you blow up an inflatable device like a balloon or something, and you squeeze it and let it go, squeeze it and let it go. That creates a sort of a rhythmic action. And that's essentially what the volcano is doing. And we think what's happening is that as it tries to come up, it's being stopped. So it's sort of moving in a kind of a jerky action. And those events we expect to get bigger because the resistance for its movement becomes more, so it has to expend more energy. And if all goes well, it either forms a dome or it recaps itself. So there will be a period when we'll be fairly confident that it's not going to explode, and therefore it will be relatively safe for people to go and do what they have to do, get stations back up, so that in case we get into a vigorous period again we lose stations, we still have enough ice in the mountain.
Well, the reason why I'm asking you all these detailed questions, not only true for the listeners, I would expect another call today. I have to face usually 15, 20 minutes questioning, and I get a lot of good advice from another geologist, seismologist. He's currently resident in Tobago by the name of Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm sure he's peppering you guys at the Seismic Research Center in Trinidad with a number of questions too.
Yes, well, he's a past colleague of ours, so.
Is there anything else you want to tell us, Richie? I know you have to go back to work. Well, this is work too, but I know you got to go.
I mean, this is important because people need to understand the hazard. The key thing, as I said, is that while it might appear in the coming weeks that the volcano, or the coming hours, that it's quieter, it's still a pretty dangerous volcano. It still can do explosive eruptions. It still can really do serious harm to people and structures on the volcano in the red zone, just like in the orange area. So I'll suggest to people don't let down your guard. Keep your guard up. Don't do anything stupid. And let's remain safe and make sure that we keep the record that we have of nobody being killed from this eruption.
Okay, Professor, before you leave us this morning, just a couple more questions. Some samples were taken of the ash to send out to be tested. Have you gotten the results from those as yet?
No. You're expecting a more rapid turnaround than is possible. Because remember, the airport is still closed, so we can't get anything out. So they haven't gone yet. We're probably going to try to get them bagged and send them out today. And our intention is for them to be analyzed both in terms of looking at the health aspects as well as looking at the volcanological aspects. So they haven't gone yet. So we wouldn't have any results. And we'd expect it probably take a week or two for us to get the results once they've left St. Vincent.
Well, there's a boat coming up from Trinidad today, officially from the government. So you may be able to get it down to the Seismic Research Center to send off from down there because they're cleaning up the airport here in St. Vincent out at Argyle. They have a lot of ash, as you know. They're clearing the surface, washing it away, and so on and so forth. That may take a couple of days.
Okay. So we'll try to capitalize on that.
So that's an option. So I just want to indicate that.
Okay.
All right. Another question, Professor. You mentioned the capping and the uncapping. Is it the case where the longer it takes between blowing the caps, per se, that the more explosive or more violent each blowout would be?
That's an interesting question. It's yes and no, because the extent to which it is violent is not only related to the pressurization, it's related to how much gas it has. So I think the force of the initial explosion is more or less going to be similar. The question is, once it's unroofed the cap, does it have enough gas-rich magma to keep going? And that is the part. And when I say keep going, for the plume to get bigger, for the explosions to continue, because it has to overcome a certain amount of resistance to do the initial push through. But if it doesn't have, after the initial push through, it doesn't have very much gas-rich magma below, it will push through and that's it. It goes up in the air and it stops. But what often happens is that if anybody ever looked at the plumes, they tend to look like if they're alive. They pulse up, and then you see another pulse come in, and then you see another pulse come in. That's because once they've broken through the initial pulse, once they've broken through the rock, and gotten to the surface, if there's enough gas-rich magma below, you will then feed another pulse. And that, to a certain extent, is more the question. And that is not so much related to the cap. That is more related to the present existence of gas-rich magma beneath the surface. And that we don't really exactly know how much it is. So you can really take confidence that, the longer it takes to break through, that might tell you something about how much you have, but that doesn't necessarily tell you about what it might do. Anecdotally, I would think, not so much, but I would think that generally one would think that the longer it takes to break through, the less likely it will break through. But then also, the more likely when it breaks through, that probably it means that it has enough gas-rich magma to do that. Therefore, it will be bigger.
Now, from what you're saying there, then, do I follow logically that it is a better thing if it simply gradually builds a dome?
Yeah, because then yes, and it's to the extent that it means that it's getting rid of some of this gas, which could potentially become explosive, while at the same time, it's getting rid of it in a non-explosive way, yes, which is what it was doing before.
Yes.
So we would like to see a dome growing and a lot of gas coming out still.
Yes.
And therefore, the pressure doesn't build up that much, yes.
Yes. I was just... Now, just as a matter of interest for those who would have an idea of the pre-existing amount of ash which has come out, at the time of the explosion, the big explosion a few days ago, you had said that the 2021 dome was about 13 plus million cubic meters of material.
Yeah.
And that the 1979 dome had built into several times that.
Yes.
So, just from the dome, how much ash you think would have come out? That 79 dome, the rough size would have been what in cubic meters?
Yeah, I think
the volume. Sorry.
I think it was up to about 50 or 60 million cubic meters. So, in terms of the minimum amount of material that was mobilized in the last couple of days, you're talking about things upwards of 70 million.
Plus what came out. Plus what came out through the explosions.
Yes. Remember that in addition to the pre-existing domes that were destroyed, that new material that was coming from the earth was also being added. So it's a significant amount. I mean, we'll have volumes later on. Some people have done estimates so far using the size of the plumes and making certain assumptions. But those are the kind of figures you're talking about. It's quite a lot of material has been injected into the atmosphere.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Richie.
All right.
Until tomorrow morning for the Richie and Ralph show.
Yes. Until next time.
Until next time.
Right. Thank you very much.
Take care. All right.
No, I was wondering that if while I'm saying some things, if God Saunders can call in, because water has been a big problem, and I know that we have done some improvements yesterday overnight, and I know CWSC had been working very, very energetically, and there may be, from my conversations early this morning with Garth, it seems as though we're in a position with a little better news on the waterfront than yesterday, and I think some people in South Leadenhall and Kingston would have seen the difference between, say, yesterday morning and this morning. So perhaps God could call us and tell us what's happening there, because that's critical. That's absolutely critical. And while God is coming, and even when I'm talking, interrupt me so that we get God.
We'll try to get him on the line, Prime Minister.
Yes. Yesterday, as I had said, yesterday afternoon, as I had mentioned in the morning, that we were having a National Emergency Management Council meeting. That's with all the ministers of government, all the heads of department, permanent secretaries, private sector entities, and the like. And I want to address some life and living issues, which I had supermarket operators there, and they assured me that currently and what food they have coming in, they have enough food to feed the country, because that's in addition to what food is we get in by donations. I wanted to make sure that the importers of food, that we have enough of it. And that was assured to us. And in the case of one supermarket, which has some shipments going to destination St. Lucia with the documents and so on already, that they can be diverted here, and we simply accept the documentation. And I gave the instructions that be done, so that we increase the extent of the food supply what we have. And I've been advised that though the volume turn a wrong time, the vessels would come every week, but they will order on a twice weekly basis, on a every other week, so to speak. But they're upping their orders as a consequence of clearly taking account of the loss of some local food, wrong provisions and the like, which are not available, and so that I was given that assurance. There was a problem with bread because of the water. Gart is here?
Yes, Prime Minister.
Okay, well, I'll continue that discussion. Gart, you heard them say several bakeries have a problem with baking because of water. The Randys are a little fortunate because they seem to be on the line down there, which is the hospital line.
Yes.
But Grace, for instance, and other bakers, so they have a problem in producing bread. But now, do we have water for them now? Tell us the story.
I spoke to Nigel yesterday afternoon, and we were...
That's Nigel Graves.
Nigel Graves, yes. Sorry, yes, at Sunrise. And we are hoping to have water in Annisvale this morning. So it's and that's through the pipe. So
okay.
That should be okay. The other bakeries along the way, we would like them to call us at our CWSA number, which is 4571445, and we will dispatch trucks expressly to them, because we know the production of food is important.
Well, Randy himself had offered to provide some water too, from his supply.
Okay.
But it is vital that the bakers
and the kitchens for the shelters as well.
The kitchen for the shelters, people who cook in generally. So I want us to get a handle on that with the water. But tell us about the water generally, and then and then these persons can contact CWSA to get the water supply, because we need to feed the people in the shelters and elsewhere, and I will come to that.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, Mr. PM, we were able to restore some water on both the Dalloway and Majorca systems, and that's a limited amount of water. So I think we're up to just about between 55 and 60% of our island-wide capacity at present.
Where that would cover us?
The extremity. Well, we have Leyu on. Leyu is on and off, but Leyu has a supply. It's a spring supply. So from Leyu to Kaliakwa, we are in a much better position than we were yesterday afternoon, from the combination of the Leyu source, the Dalloway source, and the Majorca source. However, as I mentioned on some programs,
No, but let me
earlier,
I just want to be very specific. Just bear with me. Just bear with me.
okay.
I have the map here and the shelters in front of me. Now, you said you couldn't get to you'd get today to Annisville by Greaves, but you also told me that you have gotten to Calico. How you got to Calico? From which
No,
source?
no, no. I was explaining the extremity of the combination of those systems.
Yes.
The Layu, Majorca, and Dalloway stretches from Buckament to Calico. However, I was about to say that there are pockets.
Okay.
There are pockets along the way that have not yet received because there are challenges in terms of the pressure. The entire line went empty. So we have to gradually fill and pressurize the line. So that is taking some time.
So let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
Layu Government School, I'm talking about shelters, should have water in the pipe.
Yes.
Buckament Bay Secondary School and the Golden Year Center.
They should have. They should have as well, yes.
All the shelters, there's 17 of them in South Leeward, from Lomans Leeward Anglican down to Vermont Community Center, and everything in between should have.
They should have, but I'm still to verify that. They will have to tell us now because they
No, but I'm just saying that what you say you have available.
Yes.
And we have
in that zone.
We have 23 shelters in the Kingston area, from the Church of the Ascension, that's the Zion Hill Anglican Church, to Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, and everything in between, including
Kingston Park, yes.
Yes, that was Kingston Park.
Yes.
From Zion Hill Government School, come all the way, go up to Redemption Shops, Community Center, and down Kingston Anglican and Kingston Government over in Stony Ground. They should have water.
They should have water, yes.
And therefore everything in between, grammar school, high school, Thomas Saunders, St. Mary, C.W. Prescott, Gospel Hall, etc., etc.
Yes, they should have water. The greater Kingston area should have water now.
So that's an improvement. So that's 23.
Yes, that's a significant improvement.
We have about 80 shelters at the moment, maybe 80 a little bit. So if we have those 23 and 17 in South Leeward, that's 40. And the 3 in Central Leeward, which you say from Layu to Buckament. And then I know it doesn't operate because of the connections of the systems, how they go. You may miss a geographical area, it doesn't follow always neatly. Nobody in none of the shelters in West St. George yet would get.
West St. George, yes. Some of the shelters in West St. George are being supplied from the Majorca system, and some are being supplied from the Dalloway system.
Oh, we have 9. We have 9 shelters there. Dorsetshire Hill, Daphne, West St. George School, Belair, Gomez, St. Teresa's Roman Catholic, Doris Mackey up in Upper Cane Hall, Dorsetshire Hill Evangelical Church, and the government school.
Yeah.
They should all have?
Those are all in the zone. Yes.
Okay, so that's 40, 43, and 9. That's 52.
And if anyone just as you're on it, if any one of those shelters do not have water, feel free to let us know. So that we can, we can address any issue.
All right.
That you're supposed to have. Yeah.
No. Let us go to East St. George.
Yes, East St. George is a challenging area where we have to supply those shelters with truck-borne water.
Okay, but do you reach as far down as Diamond from your supply, your additional supply which you got from
Jennings?
From Jennings.
Yes. We got as far down as Tubbs.
Oh, so you didn't reach Diamond?
Yes. So
okay,
the Diamond area, yeah.
So are you telling me that the shelters in South Central, we have 6 shelters there, North Union all the way go up to Lauders and Greg's. Those should have water from Jennings?
Those wouldn't have pipe-borne water.
They wouldn't have pipe-borne water, okay.
Yeah. The water's along the coast.
Oh, it's only along the coast?
Yes.
So
what we have done is to fill up along the coast. And
so
take
that
water
means
into
that
there.
means Bayabu should have and Stubbs should have.
Yes,
And
those
Argyle.
areas, and yes, yeah.
And Moncook and so forth. Okay. Well, that's a big improvement. Well,
Yeah,
what it means.
but the problem, the windward coast is our biggest challenge today.
Yes.
Because what we are supplying there is a finite amount. It will run out at some point. We are hoping again to go into Jennings this morning to assess the quality of the water in the intake to see whether or not we can put that back into our system to replenish the storage that is being depleted currently.
Okay, but let me ask this question. Here, God. If therefore, let us even say at its lowest, you're supplying by direct pipe-borne water. I'm not going to deal with the South Windward area, and I'm not going to deal with those on the coast in East St. George. I'm just dealing with Kingston, South Leeward, 3 in Central Leeward, and the 9 in West St. George. We should have 5/8 of the centers.
Yeah.
That should mean, therefore, that the other centers, the trucks, how many trucks you have? 20-something?
Well, I think it has increased because there are persons who are pledging and there are persons who are going down in an ad hoc way to our well in Pembroke and filling up. So
Okay.
it may well be as many as 40.
Okay,
right
it means therefore
Yeah.
that all of these shelters should be getting water today.
Yes, and
If
I also,
either directly or because you have fewer places to take the trucks.
yes,
As a priority I'm talking about, you go to those which don't have the pipe-borne water.
correct.
Even though I'm sure that you will want, nevertheless, just in case something happens to fill up their tanks too.
Of course.
Good, but we did, and you know to prioritize that. No,
Yeah.
the what about sources like? Sorry, somebody's bringing something for me here. I'm sorry about this. The humble African has called in, says that South Windward shelters do not have any pipe-borne water. So probably the Jennings, well, it's a good thing we excluded those from the. So you still have to deal with those, even those
Yes.
on the
The South Windward shelters are actually on the Jennings system.
Yeah.
So we kept the water along the coast. So that's why I'm saying we have to fill up.
No, but Bayabu is along the coast, and Stubbs is along the coast.
Yeah.
But Stevenson is sending a note here to me to tell me that none of them have water. So which means that the what should happen there has not happened.
No. What should happen has happened. We've kept the water along the coast in the main line.
Yeah.
So we are extracting it from the main, not from the branch lines. The branch lines are what take the supply into the shelters.
Yes.
Even those on the coast. But we've set up standpipes along the coast from the main line only.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they from the main line and deliver to the shelters.
So they have to get it from the standpipes on the coast.
Yes, but we can extract it from hydrants and take it to them.
Okay then.
But
well,
but we have to do an assessment this morning because I'm not sure how much of the supply yesterday has been depleted.
Okay, I understand that. I understand that. Now, there are villages inland, who are not in shelters. For instance, South Rivers, Park Hill, Diamond, Chapmans, Lowmans, who are not necessarily people who have not necessarily gone into shelters.
Yeah.
Are we delivering water into those communities? Because we have been talking shelters, but we need to deliver in communities too.
Yes, we'll endeavor to do that. We have, those are also on our list, our target list. Yeah.
All right, because it's very. I know. I'm not trying to add more problems to you. I'm just.
No, we have those problems already. You don't have to add them. We have them before you. We have them. We share the problem. So don't worry.
No. There are is there any way, like for instance, there's the old source from the spring in South Rivers.
South Rivers, yeah.
Anything can be done quickly to help with that, or that's a more longer term venture?
That's a long-term venture, and that would depend on the success we have in Jennings. If we can get Jennings back up and running, then that would not be required.
Okay.
So we have a two-pronged approach this morning where we're going to look at those two options. The first option is to get Jennings back up.
Okay.
If Jennings can get back up.
Okay, I understand that.
Right.
Now, there's a growing problem. Now, people have been in shelters. You have in Caliqua 120 odd persons there in shelter. I take that as one area. You have Thomas Saunders. When I checked them 2 days ago, was 117. There will be more now because some other persons have been added. The point I'm coming to now, a lot of garbage has been collected. We need to collect the garbage outside of the regular cycles.
Yes, and that is being done. Yeah, we have engaged all of the private contractors who operated in the north of the island, who are now not assigned in that area in the danger zone. They are now helping us out in the green zone.
Well, we gotta get that because we're gonna start. Already it start, but we don't want to have it develop into a health hazard where we smelling because people, for instance, in the kitchens, the primary school and some secondary school, primary schools which have well-equipped kitchen for the school feeding program, and the tuck shops at the secondary schools. They'll be cleaning chicken and other things and so on, and they'll be putting them in the, a lot of garbage collected. We got to move it garbage.
Well, we have daily garbage collection at the shelters.
Well, no.
Some of them have
No. You might have daily garbage collection from the shelters, but you don't have daily garbage collection from every shelter. You may have daily garbage collection from shelters.
Well, right.
But we need to have the shelter, everyone, because there are shelters where I've received reports that we haven't had the garbage collection. I'm not doubting that you have daily garbage collections, but not daily garbage collections from every shelter.
Yeah. But remember, we're speaking of 80 odd shelters.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our business, and I know you're solving problems.
Yeah.
But we can't penny pinch. We gotta get even more trucks. We gotta clean the place. We can't penny pinch.
But we need the shelters to report these matters as well.
No. But even without reporting, you have a list of the shelters. Sometimes people are so overwhelmed at Nemo. We know as a fact that every shelter, the solid waste unit, management unit has the list of the shelters. They know each shelter so that they know that garbage, so they have to go to each of them every day.
Yes.
Each of them.
I know. But even outside of that, I was about to say that whenever they experience a problem, outside of their regular routines,
absolutely.
We want them to call. Feel free to call.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are strengthening further the reportage and for information to be sent in to various points, and some of them are already online. I don't have the numbers here, but they're already online. And if Nemo is hearing, they can call in or get somebody to see what they are and give the radio stations. Now, how are we coming down at where the well is, down in South Leeward, from which you're extracting? How is that going?
That's continuing as it has been over the last 4 or 5 days. We're extracting water on a continuous basis.
Now, tell me, how much water you fill? What is the volume you can fill per minute?
We can fill up to a gallon per minute.
Okay, so if you have a if you have a 600,
Actually, no, it's actually more than that.
because
Sorry.
I was going to
We
say
can, yes.
I was
We
going
can
to
fill
I
up.
was going to say if you have a
Yeah.
600 gallon truck,
Yeah.
that's 600 minutes.
No.
That's
Sorry.
that,
Yeah. We filled our
60 minutes an
1,500.
hour. That's 10
Yes.
hours.
Yes. We filled
Yeah,
our 1,500 gallon tank in 15 minutes.
a 1,500 gallon
Yes.
tank
In,
in.
in, in 15 minutes.
Okay, so it's 100 gallons
Yes.
per minute.
And
Okay,
per minute.
all
Exactly.
right, good.
That's
All
what it
right,
is.
all right,
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, and what the trucks do? They just line up.
They just line up. They just line up and they collect water on a continuous basis. So anybody who has a truck and they're interested in helping out with the distribution, they can go down to the Pembroke area on that road at the casino and line up, and they will be.
And that goes for instance for bakers or people who
Yes.
want to
Anyone, any private sector person can go.
and who involved in food production and all the rest of it. I mean,
Yes.
cooking.
Right.
Okay, all
Right.
right.
And I spoke to the commissioner yesterday, and he assisted with some traffic diversion because we had some traffic issues on that road yesterday.
Yes,
So they provided
well,
us with
I could understand that.
Yeah.
No, this is a better report than yesterday got.
Yes, we have improved, and we are hoping to have the continuous improvement on a daily basis. So,
Plus we are getting in some water from overseas. We got in
yeah,
17,000. The bottle. We got a lot of bottles yesterday. I can't remember the actual number. I think it's 17,000 liters we got from Venezuela. We got some coming from Grenada. The boat here from Venezuela, they had to stay overnight for certain reasons. But they're leaving today at 6. They're reaching St. Lucia tomorrow morning. Well, they're reaching tomorrow morning in St. Lucia at 6 o'clock.
yeah,
And they're going to load up the boat. I already had made contact with, Prime Minister Chastany, but also Dominic Hadid, who owns the Blue Waters both out of Trinidad and out of and in St. Lucia. No. And more water is coming tomorrow from Trinidad too. I also want to say to the importers of water, I have removed as of yesterday all the duties, all the charges, everything on the bringing in of water. Because we need it, and we need it cheaper.
yeah,
When we import, so we are doing that now that things are flowing there better. We also, just in case, all supplies which are coming in for donations and the like, all of that would be duty free, and until further notice. And the barrels for persons, we are, as of Monday the 12th, up to the 30th of June in the first instance, they are completely duty free, and I'm removing the $25 handling charge too, so that we have to get stuff rolling into people. It's important that we have water, we have shelter, we have water, we have food, we have medicines, we have the shelter, an area where, and you see, once we get back the water, we don't need to go and buy clothing, because people would then be able to wash the clothes.
yes, yeah,
Because some people have on clothes for a couple of days, and what they came with in their bag, they run out already. So that's a practical question. We have to make sure we have all these essential things in order, as far as is humanly practicable.
correct.
We are in this for the long haul, and we must organize it in that way. I really want to thank you.
Understood.
I want to thank you and the workers at CWSA, as I've done in relation to VINLEC, and all the public sector workers who are doing a splendid job. I
hope they're listening, and I'm sure they're listening, and I'm sure they appreciate it. Yeah.
And thanks for persons who had said to me that they thought I should have closed down the tongue yesterday. And I said, no, we keep essential services. And I I said banking services are essential. Well, some banks closed, but I hope they're open today. But I specifically asked the Cabinet Secretary to mention that money services must remain open, because you see the long lines yesterday and this morning at money services, because the people overseas are sending money to their families. And if the supermarkets have food to sell and drink to sell, people have money, they will buy. People will come out of the shelters because they have the ID card in the shelters and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So sometimes when a person thinks of one thing, that, keep people out because of the roads and all the rest of it, there are things which need to be done for us to keep the society functioning. And we have to be very practical. And people will go the extra mile, as they have been doing.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Saunders, before you go, a quick question. How does the ash affect the rainfall? Does it promote or does it inhibit the rainfall?
That's outside of my sphere of knowledge. I don't know if it would inhibit or if it would attract the rainfall, but I know for instance, if it rains a lot, we would have a subsidence of the ash. I mean, from in the atmosphere, but in terms of rainfall generation, that's a science that I wouldn't want to venture into.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much, Gath.
Yes, and thank you for co-opting me into the R&R show. I hope you would not add the G, because that's okay.
No. You are you're vital in this regard.
Yeah,
But one of the things, let me just finally say this, Gath.
Yeah.
One of the things I find useful, in addition to getting the reports from what people tell you, and I know it's difficult, take a half an hour, just pass by a shelter.
Only half an hour, Mr. PM?
I'm just saying, because I know you're very busy.
No. I am actually on the way to a shelter. I'm speaking from my vehicle as we speak.
Okay then, all right. Because
I'm in the field.
Because what happens is this: sometimes when the information is filtered to you,
of course, yes.
it gets distorted.
Yes. Well,
I mean, we can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
But we need to keep ourselves close to the coal face, metaphorically.
Yes.
Okay.
But verify. Yes. Okay.
God bless. Thanks.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Good. Now, I know a number of persons are calling and sending me messages, and other people today are sending, not just me alone in the government. They want to send a few packets of this and a few things of that. I'm asking them, please, do not send these one or two little packages. You're in New York, get yourself organized with other people so that you can have a good container come in. And we will have the port clear them in a particular manner. And given the fact we reducing the extent of the bureaucracy to get any charges and the like. Because in a disaster, one of the main areas you don't want to be clogged up unnecessarily with too many little things is the port. I just want to say that. And since we have a lot of food in the country through the supermarkets, it is important that you send in. It would be more helpful, in my humble suggestion, send the money for your family that they can buy. And because in addition, we are getting significant supplies of bigger NGOs, non-government organizations, sending say pledging that they will send various kinds of foodstuff and the like. So I just want to mention that, because in disaster management we have to be very scientific. No. We have finished. We are coming to. We have done certain things very well. We have gotten people out by and large. And I say by and large, overwhelmingly, almost 100%, but you have a few persons remaining who in the red zone. And I'll speak to that very shortly. Nobody has died. Nobody has gotten injured. We have to try and keep that record. We have the shelters up and running. Some of the shelters are much better managed than others, but each of them has dedicated people. Some of the shelters are better resourced than others, and we are ensuring that they be all equally resourced, at least at a level which any objective person can say is reasonable in the circumstances. We got about 80 mattresses from the Venezuelans yesterday. We need, the count which we have is about 1,400 and something more cots or mattresses we need. We had cots come in, but their space, which was closed, created a difficulty. We're getting some more. And we should, within a day or two, address this, because what we are talking about, I want also cuts to go to families, people who are in families, in people's houses, not in the shelters, who may be sleeping on the floor with some bedding. I would like those persons to get a cot because there's less space taken up with that rather than the mattress. And we have a lot more cots to assist in that regard, including people in private dwellings, because the people in the private dwellings have opened them for their friends and their family. Some have opened them for strangers. And there are a lot of people in them. Now I want us, we have a list already. By yesterday afternoon was reported to me 2,000 and something persons in private shelters, private accommodation, who have gone into these places. Private people have opened their homes for families and friends. But that is not all. The number is far larger than that. So I want you to call into NEMO. There's a line which we're setting up. I have asked, we have gotten additional personnel to come to help with that. So I can help with not only within a few days' time, even for those persons with some cuts, in addition to where in shelters you may need some more, because what happens is this: you may have 70 people in a shelter, and you had the allocation there, and then you have another 30 persons turn up within a few hours or days, and you have to get those. I mean, we have in stock, and we have exhausted the stock. We have exhausted mattresses locally. If there's anybody, any other provider of mattresses locally, who have any, even this 10, 15, 20, we will buy them. I just want to say that. I think Dion want to show me something because I want to deal with this in a very practical way. What it says here. Let me just read what is here. Yes, I just said that it applies to personal barrels. I just said that. They were inquiring whether it's in fact, in the case of barrels, it's up to the end of June, and there's no $25 charge, nothing, absolutely nothing. You just bring your barrels, but let us get them come in a bulk to make it easier to handle them. No. I'm addressing both in the shelters, as you have been seeing here, and I'm addressing also the persons in the homes, and persons who have not left the orange zone. Some people who haven't left the orange zone because they can manage, but they also need food and water. I just addressed the question of water there with Guard Saunders in those areas. And those persons also need, we're putting up more information up, it should have been up already, as to where you can call in. I want everybody who is in people's homes, and we want to know where the homes are, the telephone numbers, the numbers of persons, etc. And we want to help. That is vital. Because what we have going on here is a public-private partnership. And as I said a couple of days ago, a family may host 2-3 persons, and they help them at the moment. Might even host them with more, with food which they have. But as this is prolonged, the host family can't keep you in that way. That's why your family who want to send you money from overseas must send it so you can buy stuff. And we also want to provide food packages. We are setting up in this new phase an operation for that. In fact, I am Prime Minister Chastain and I were talking. People who send, for instance, to St. Lucia for transshipment here, if for whatever reason, or they have there, they can package them. They don't have to send the stuff in bulk. And that makes life easier in terms of any distribution. But of course, we will have people here doing packaging too. So that is, and if we're doing packaging, we need packages. So all of these things, it's a big logistical operation. And I am prepared for us to address this over the long haul. Now, and this is only an indication of some of the things which we are dealing with. Today, I just want to touch on security. 50 persons from the security forces in Trinidad and Tobago are coming up. All the arrangements are being made. The Commissioner of Police and I this morning spoke as to how they're being accommodated and what is their role. The emergency people who came yesterday from Venezuela, the 15 of them, they already went to Nemo. You come to do any work, emergency, you're under the authority of Nemo and under the authority of the minister responsible for national emergency, which is me. You come as security officers. If you're not within the RSS, because we have a special law for the RSS, if you, like those from Trinidad, you come under the Visiting Forces Act. The Commissioner of Police is the commanding officer. Naturally, they will have their own officer, but in other words, they work within our systems. And we are getting RSS personnel also. We don't have a security problem. Commissioner reported to me that everything was calm last night, and I get the security reports very early because I want to know before I leave home what is the situation and what we need to be doing. And I get the situation reports during the day and the night. We are getting some assistance from the RSS. Well, we are a member of the RSS, as we have helped. You know, sometimes when we send police to other RSS countries when they have challenges, and people say, well, you know, we have crime incidents where Ralph sending 30, 40 police there and so on. They now understand what it is. Today for you, tomorrow for me. That's how we have to do this in this Caribbean family. So I don't want to wait until any security issue arises. I want to deal with that up front, because sometimes some malevolent persons may seek to use our problems, our social and natural disaster problems for their own selfish purposes from a criminal standpoint. In terms of work on the diplomatic front, we continue doing a number of things. Yesterday, for instance, I wrote a letter to the President of the United States. I've written to the other governments. Today I'm having a conversation with the Secretary of State in the U.S. I have a telephone appointment or Zoom appointment. I'd be involved in one with the Canadian Foreign Minister, and every day I'm in touch with our colleagues in CARICOM. We are in communication with the World Bank, the IMF, I mentioned the UN and so on. I get the reports also in relation to health from Simone Keyser Beach, and the issues still of the testing and vaccination. Those things are still very much alive, because we saw yesterday down in the South Leeward area, as was reported by the Health Services Committee of NEMO, 14 cases of COVID, and they're being tracked. We don't know whether what happened, what I call the Beckway madness, not because Beckway people were involved, but people who left here and went down over the Easter. Simone Keyser Beach tells me sometime before the end of this week, we will see whether that has had any. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that didn't have any impact for any upsurge, because that would add another layer of challenge with all the shelters. People now understand what I'm talking about, the testing and also the vaccination. We have to keep ourselves safe in every material particular. There are other arrangements and other things to talk about, but I think I've given an indication where we are and what we are doing. And I'm sharpening the organizational arrangements, apparatuses, as we move into a different phase of the relief effort. I want to thank the British government. Yesterday they sent £200,000 to Sedema. And we are working with Sedema because I gave instructions to Sedema for the agencies, the development partners, they want to send any monies. Sedema couldn't deals with the money, and for the purpose for which it is sent, what has to be sent to our disaster fund account. There's a disaster fund account. The account is up online at the Accountant General's office. I just want to say something here. Camilo will speak to this. I don't know, it was finished yesterday. There's a platform with 3 banks involving with the government that you can send resources. You can enter that platform to have resources sent. That would be an official one. The missions, our consulates, our various missions are authorized to set up accounts to receive monies. We haven't given authorization to any individual outside. They're legitimate persons. But I'm saying to you that if you're doing this, you can do it through the mission accounts, the mission disaster accounts, the various overseas missions. I don't want to get involved in the thing of saying, well, this personal group I'm giving approval to or not. I'm not involved in that. We're setting up a platform, and then there's the Accountant General's, the disaster fund account set up by the Attorney General, and also the relief account for NEMO. All that information is online as far as I am aware. The other platform I'm talking about should have been finalized yesterday. I just saying all this in terms of how we do the business. I don't know if any question came in on the WhatsApp which you want to ask me about.
We got quite a number of them, actually. Some of them were answered already, actually, and I know that you have a number of appointments lined up this morning as well. But somebody did note, and I think it's important that we raise it, for those who might be sending barrels in, that they try to get the plastic ones, as they can be used as well to store water as water storage banks at home. Just to add that one, I think that's important as well, so that persons would not just get the benefit of the supply, but also the storage capacity as well.
I'm asking persons. I know I've gotten several emails, several text messages while I'm talking here about persons. There's a private three-story home in Villa, and they give the directions and where they need. They don't have water and they don't have food and so forth. The point is when you make these private arrangements and you go there, I don't know about those private arrangements. So that you need to have it registered with NEMO. I will get my staff to deal with these, what persons send for me. But I am not the clearing house. I mean, they come to me. I will pass it on to the relevant persons. And there's several of them. But there is NEMO, and there is another number. I don't know the number offhand here, but it's up on the relevant.
We're getting some questions, Prime Minister.
Yes.
More as they come in. I believe persons are now hearing us and adding their voices via WhatsApp, coming in fast and furious. But someone is asking, does the new policy regarding importation and the waivers apply to electrical charges for refrigerated containers? So if you have refrigerated goods coming in, would it also apply to those as well for relief?
Whatever the relief goods are coming in, they would have the duty free. They're not. I take it they're not talking about the refrigerated container itself. What are they talking about? If it is a refrigerated container, that person has to apply.
It's not for relief. It's for port charges they're concerned about. Those would remain in place?
The port charges are there,
Okay.
but the port charges, what we normally do with the port charges, if you come the port charges are fairly minimal. But I could address the port charges today with the Port Authority. I was dealing with the things which are dealt with through customs, the revenue issues there.
All right, another question rather. Can you ask the Prime Minister whether his team has reached out to the Canadians to deploy their water sanitation team who can make 50,000 litres of water in distant areas and situations?
Well, we are in touch with the Canadians, and so too CDEMA, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. And today, hopefully, that I will have a conversation with the Foreign Minister from Canada. Because I see on my schedule, Angie reminded me yesterday that I have that appointment. So, anything else? Because
there's another one. I wouldn't detain you any further, Prime Minister. There's another question asking about for the portion of the cleanup efforts. Would any concessions be granted to things such as power washers and
absolutely. By the way, we are through the United Nations, we are having technical advice coming in relation to the cleanup of the ash, and we are also dealing with a development partner in relation to equipment, so that, and I know the private sector would be involved in that, and we will. I will give the duty-free concession on those. So anybody, just write me on that. Just write me straight on that.
All right, Prime Minister. Thank you very much for stopping by this morning and providing that update.
And my email is pmosvg@vincisurf.com. PMOSVG, Prime Minister of St. Vincent Grenadines, at vincisurf.com. PMOSVG@vincisurf.com. All right. Thank you very much. God bless.
God bless.